The list of people involved in the New Apostolic Reformation is far too long to list on one video alone, but there are key players, and we would like you to know who they are. Some of these people are listed as apostles, some prophets, some pastors, and some claim to hold all the offices or some new hybrid designation. Of course, the list has to start with Apostle C. Peter Wagner of Wagner Leadership Institute, who calls himself a quote-unquote super apostle. There are dozens of other organizations he is the apostle of, such as Global Harvest Ministries, Mission America, Lighthouse Movement, International Coalition of Apostles, Wagner Publications, and the National Prayer Committee. Some of the key people featured on the video clips we will be showing you who are involved with C. Peter Wagner's New Apostolic Reformation and his International Coalition of Apostles, and who have taught at the Wagner Leadership Institute are as follows. Apostle and Overseer John Eckhart of Impact Network, Crusaders Ministries in Chicago, Illinois. Apostle Chuck Pierce of Glory of Zion Ministries International and Global Harvest Ministries. Apostle Prophet Bishop Bill Hammond of Christian International Ministries Network. Apostle Jim LaFoon of the International Apostolic Team of Morning Star International. Prophetess Cindy Jacobs of Generals of Intercession and Women's Aglow Fellowship. Senior Pastor Ted Haggard of New Life Church, Colorado Springs, where the Wagners attend, and Global Harvest Ministries. Prophet Mike Bickle, formerly of the Kansas City Prophets and now of Friends of the Bridegroom and International House of Prayer. Prophetess Mary Crum of Life Center Ministries and Christian International Ministries Network. Senior Pastor Jack Deere of Evangelical Foundation Ministries and also Associate Pastor at Trinity Fellowship Church of Amarillo, Texas. Prophetess Senior Pastor Barbara Yoder of Shekinah Christian Church of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Apostle Senior Pastor Dutch Sheets of Springs Harvest Fellowship of Colorado Springs, Colorado, and also of Fuller Seminary and Dutch Sheets Ministries. Now, some other prominent names from the Wagner Leadership Institute and the International Coalition of Apostles are the following. Intercessor Alice Smith of the U.S. Prayer Center, America's National Prayer Committee, International Reconciliation Coalition, and International Spiritual Warfare Network. Intercessor Doris Wagner, wife of C. Peter Wagner, co-founder of Global Harvest Ministries. Apostle George Otis Jr. of the Sentinel Group, who's the producer of the Transformations video series. Pastor Bob Beckett of the Dwelling Place Family Church. Professor Charles Kraft of Fuller Seminary and Deep Healing Ministries. Senior Pastor David Canastrossi of Evangel Christian Fellowship. Mr. Eddie Smith, founder of the U.S. Prayer Center, America's National Prayer Committee, and U.S. Lausanne Committee. Also Mission America, the International Spiritual Warfare Network, the World Prayer Advisory Council, and the International Reconciliation Coalition. Teacher Ed Silvoso, founder of Harvest Evangelism Incorporated and the Lighthouse Movement. Apostle Dr. Belcher, member of the CFNI Executive Management Committee, Director of the Institute Emeritus, President of the CFN Alumni Ministers Fellowship, Instructor for the School of Pastoral Ministry. Senior Pastor Ernest Gentile, founding pastor of Christian Community Church in San Jose, California. Intercessor Frank Hammond of Children's Bread. Mr. George Barna of Barna Research Group Limited. Pastor Intercessor Jill Griffith of Wagner Publications. Writer Jim Rutz of Open Church Ministries and a freelance writer for groups such as World Vision, Wycliffe, Youth for Christ, Prison Fellowship, and the Lausanne Committee. And also Jews for Jesus and InterVarsity. Writer Ken Geyer of Wagner Publications. Apostle Senior Pastor Lawrence Kong of Faith Community Baptist Church in Singapore. Pastor Linda Rios Brook of Lakeland Foundation Incorporated and Linda Rios Brook Ministries. Teacher Laura Allison, founder and president of Celebration Ministries. Senior Pastor Naomi Dowdy, founder president of Global Leadership Network and the Theological Center for Asia in Singapore. Author Quinn Scherer, author of Pray for Your Children and Good Night, Lord. Apostle Rick Marshall, founding pastor of Springs of Life Fellowship, Sunnyvale, California. Senior Pastor Robert Heidler of Glory of Zion Outreach Center, Shekinah Messianic Ministries, Pray for the Peace of Jerusalem, and Glory of Zion International Ministries. Senior Pastor Stephen Mansfield of Belmont Church in Nashville, Tennessee. Pastor Terry Tickle of Aldersgate United Methodist, Houston, Texas. Author Rebecca Wagner Systema, who's the associate publisher for Wagner Publications. Pastor David DeBoard, Executive Director of the Christian Pastoral Counseling Center of Pasadena and of Deep Healing Ministries. Pastor and author Barbara Wentrobel of Wagner Publications. Senior Pastor Che An of Harvest Rock Church in Pasadena, California, and the founder and president of Harvest International Ministries. Author Stan DeKoven of Wagner Publications and over 20 books and numerous study guides. Author Hector Torres, founder and president of Hispanic International Ministries and coordinator to the Hispanic World for the World Prayer Center based in Colorado Springs. Senior Pastor Michael Fletcher of Banner Church in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and founder of ARC Ministries, assisting Romanian churches. Senior Pastor Larry Jackson of Bethel Outreach International Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. At the last report from the Apostolic Council of Prophetic Elders with focus on Cuba of January 10 through 11, 2002, written by Chuck Pierce, those apostles attending were as follows: Wesley and Stacy Campbell, Jim Gall, Bill and Evelyn Hammond, Mike and Cindy Jacobs, Jim LaFoon, Bart Pierce, Chuck D. Pierce, Rick Ridings, John and Paula Sanford, Michael and Andrea Schiffman, Gwen Shaw, Dutch Sheets, Sharon Stone, Tommy Tenney, Hector Torres, Peter and Doris Wagner, and Barbara Rentrobel. Notice the presence of Tommy Tenney, an anti-Trinitarian and baptismal regeneration teacher from the United Pentecostal Church, now apparently a part of Wagner's apostolic team. There has also been a lot of cross-pollination, a third-wave phrase, between movements with people such as T.D. Jakes, an avowed anti-Trinitarian.
And so, T.D. Jakes is a great example. He will preach what God is saying at a certain point in a certain time, and it just breaks open the heaven, and everybody sitting out there begins to hear what God is saying to them.
And also with Ed Silvoso, who's been instrumental in the Lighthouse and Cell Church movements.
Listen, it wasn't a matter of maybe 3 or 4 weeks after that Ed Silvoso, whom we had known for years, walks into our office in Fuller Seminary. Doris and I sit down, and we make a covenant with each other to establish what's called Harvest Evangelism International Institute in Argentina. Many of you have been to Argentina. That's how it all started.
And many others.
Explained that John Wimber and I, Doris and me and John and Carol, I mean, we did a lot of track record in the body of Christ together. In fact, John Wimber, when he founded Anaheim Vineyard and the Vineyard Movement, he was my employee. He worked for me. I gave him his paycheck twice a month in the Fuller Evangelistic Association. And all of a sudden, John gets in touch with the Kansas City Prophets. Now, at that time, Mike Bickle, who's one of our speakers here, why, he was the pastor of the Kansas City Prophets, and Paul Cain was one of the prophets, and John Wimber didn't know a thing about them. See? And so God figured that John should know, so then I'm talking about prophets, see? So Paul Cain calls up John Wimber on the telephone, and he says, John, the Lord has told me to visit you in California. Paul Cain had never been there. He said, the Lord's told me to visit you in California.
All the camps of Word Faith, Third Wave, Apostolic, Latter Rain, Manifest Sons of God, Dominionists, Reconstructionists, Liberals, Neo-Evangelicals, and Ecumenicals are now converging together in the new Apostolic Reformation. Cindy Jacobs has been seen on Benny Hinn, This Is Your Day TV program, as well as also Lauren Cunningham and Joy Dawson have been there of YWAM. The latter rain camp of Bill Hammond is now firmly part of the Wagner movement, as we'll see in the video clips. C. Peter Wagner has virtual, quote-unquote, apostolic control over vast segments of Protestant Christian churches in the areas of prayer, spiritual warfare, deliverance, world evangelization, and indigenous peoples movements. One or more people from his organization are at almost every third wave revival event. Through Mission America, he has succeeded in signing up a purported 8,000 churches and 1 million lighthouses, and is now dictating calendar events for the churches, such as his edict that the first Sunday of every November from now on will be First Nation Sunday, and every church must invite an indigenous leader affiliated with C. Peter Wagner to their church to speak.
And some exciting news. Mission America, which is the largest network of Christian organizations in North America. Every denomination's a part of it. Campus Crusade for Christ and all the Bibles, they're all a part of it. Well, at the last meeting that I was at in St. Louis, a decision was made that every November for the church from this day forward would be a celebration of First Nations history. And so the first Sunday of every November will be called First Nations Sunday.
The C. Peter Wagner controlled National Prayer Committee dictates what the churches will pray for on National Prayer Day. YWAM is spreading the Wagner doctrine of cultural and citywide redemption worldwide as set forth by John Dawson, George Otis Jr., and C. Peter Wagner. Wagner himself has ties to practically every third wave and ecumenical movement that there is, including Brownsville Assemblies of God, the Toronto Blessing and its Alpha Course, John Wimber's Vineyard Churches, the Kansas City Prophets, Richard Foster's Renovar, the Cell Church Movement out of Singapore, Charismatic Catholics, Promise Keepers, March for Jesus, and too many more to list. The fact is that since so many organizations and churches signed the Lausanne Covenant back in 1974, C. Peter Wagner and Ralph de Winter had a blank check to accomplish their agenda, apparently without much monitoring or accountability from those who signed the covenant. Since that time, Wagner bought into the doctrines of the Third Wave, Latter Rain, Manifest Sons of God, and Dominionism. Though he claims he only discovered he was teaching Latter Rain doctrines last year in an email to a discernment ministry, it's clear that now he has become the main proponent of them, and other Latter Rainers on his team, like Bill Hammond, attest to that fact. Though Wagner is still thought of as an evangelical in a number of circles, many are also unaware of the false doctrines he now espouses. As you'll see as we go along, C. Peter Wagner and his co-conspirators have taken a flight away from orthodoxy that is no less than amazing in a church age that considers itself to be more blessed with wealth and revival than any other.